Hyannisport, Massachusetts. This area has been home to several generations of the Kennedys. In fact, you can see the family compound just down there. Hi, everyone. I'm Mark Iztook. This was John and Carolyn's destination that night. They were flying here for the wedding of John's cousin Rory. The plan was to stop in Martha's Vineyard and drop off John's sister-in-law, Lauren. But they never arrived. 3 hours after the couple were due here in Hyannisport, the alarm sounded, a full-scale search ensued, and the world waited on the news that the wreckage had been found, all 3 passengers of the plane dead. The water is serene today along the New England coast, but what a different story 10 years ago this week when a massive search was underway for one of the world's most famous private citizens.
My initial reaction was to pray that he was all right.
John F. Kennedy Jr., the handsome young heir to the Kingdom of Camelot, was missing in the Atlantic, somewhere between New York City and Martha's Vineyard, an island off the Massachusetts coast. A shocked world could only wait and watch.
We were on the air constantly. Hour after hour, a picture began to form.
It was Friday, July 16th. The plan was for John and Carolyn to fly to Hyannisport for the wedding of his cousin Rory Kennedy. But first, Lauren, Carolyn's sister, was to be dropped off at Martha's Vineyard.
He never arrived at Hyannisport.
At first, guests at Rory's rehearsal dinner Friday night assumed John was late as usual. A call by a Kennedy family friend was made to the Coast Guard at 2:15 in the morning.
The hope was maybe he'd landed somewhere.
Then President Clinton was vacationing in Camp David, where he was notified with news of the missing plane. He immediately ordered a full military operation, no matter what the cost.
Word started to spread Saturday morning. At that point, nobody knew where he was.
Later that evening, debris from the plane began to wash up on the coast. On July 20th, a phone call the Kennedys dreaded. The bodies of all 3 passengers had been discovered.
It was very difficult for me to share this information with them.
So it was kind of shocking to hear that a guy that age with so much going for him was dead.
There was no finding of any reckless behavior in any way, shape, or form.
On July 23rd, John's ashes, along with Carolyn and Lauren, were scattered at sea.
He did have a will, and he did want to be buried at sea. Wherever he had, died.
The world mourned as the vibrant young man destined to play a big role on a global stage was snatched away too soon.
We really never know what he might have accomplished. I mean, that makes it almost even more tragic.
What a loss. What a loss for this family, which has been sort of star-crossed with tragedy. What a loss for the community, and what a loss for the country.
All in all, it was a time of national mourning for a man who started his life here in the White House and spent all his days in the spotlight. He was born John Fitzgerald Kennedy Jr. on November 25, 1960 at Georgetown University Hospital in Washington, D.C., 16 days after his father was elected President of the United States.
Kennedy would come to the hospital twice a day. So I think that he was so happy to have a boy.
John was the newest adorable addition to an extremely photogenic family. He had a young, handsome father, a beautiful, elegant mother, and a lovely older sister. From the very beginning, he seemed like a chip off the old block. Friendly, outgoing, rambunctious, comfortable in the limelight.
Didn't seem to be shy or run away or anything. Lots of smiles and fearless. It was kind of jaunty.
John's life in the White House was very exciting in that he had the run of the White House and he had a very happy childhood there.
Jackie, who was a very private person, on one occasion she said to Pierre Salinger, who was the press secretary, she said, "Can't we put up an extra row of trees around the White House so that people can't peek in?" And Pierre Salinger said to Jackie, "Jackie, the White House belongs to the country. You know, you can't do that."
Even Caroline's pony Macaroni became a household name as the public ate up images of Carolyn and John hamming it up in the Oval Office, frolicking in the fountain, enjoying their newly erected playground, and watching state events from the Truman balcony.
I do remember the kids being up in the balcony and imitating everything that was going on in the ceremonials, salutes, and they jumping up and down, the music and so forth. Photographers had a field day. They loved, the way, hell with the ceremonies. They were focused on the Truman balcony.
John Kennedy was not averse to using his kids for a photo op. He knew the political advantage of having pictures taken of Caroline and John in the White House. So when Jackie was out of the picture, out of the White House at various times, JFK would call the photographers in and say, here, catch this picture of John playing or Caroline playing. So we have those remarkable images of John Jr. hiding under his father's desk.
Jackie always wanted, she was furious when the pictures were taken very surreptitiously, but she also wanted copies. It was kind of vain. No, she did like them.
The family's vacations at the Kennedy compound in Hyannisport and in Newport, Rhode Island became public events as well, but through it all, young John seemed totally unfazed by the near constant presence of photographers.
I think that he was born with a great sense of people, if there's such a thing. I think his whole life showed that he was not afraid of people and was much less caring about his privacy than Jackie was.
John's passion for flying was also clear early on, and President Kennedy had nicknamed him Helicopter Head.
He knew that John loved helicopters, so when he was going off on a trip, and he would always take the helicopter to Andrews Air Force Base, which is a very short ride, so that he would take John with him, and then someone would bring him back in the car.
But tragedy struck just before John's 3rd birthday. His beloved dad was gunned down during a trip to Dallas.
They lost a father who loved them, adored them, in fact. And there's no question that Jackie did everything she could to be both, but it's impossible.
And instead of celebrating, John spent most of his 3rd birthday saying goodbye to his father. His poignant tribute, now one of the iconic images of the 20th century.
What happened was his father's funeral was on John Kennedy Jr.'s 3rd birthday. And Jackie actually told her son to practice saluting. She got one of the military officers there to help him salute correctly. And as his father's coffin passed in front of the Kennedy family during the funeral, Jackie leaned down and whispered into little John's ear, "Say goodbye to Daddy."
What is not commonly known is that after burying her husband, Jackie returned to the White House that evening to stage a 3rd birthday party for her son.
She really was a lioness about protecting her young.
She did not want this glaring spotlight on the kids.
So just a few months after leaving the White House, John Jr., Caroline, and Jackie moved to New York, which would become their permanent home. Coming up, John Kennedy Jr. grows up to become the sexiest man alive.
And John had a slightly roving eye.
Plus, his days as a budding actor at Brown University. We'll hear from one man who knows all about that.
He had a good voice. He did things with the lines.
And we'll hear from one of JFK Jr.'s closest friends about the John he knew.
I miss my friend on a daily basis.
Find out why John was so famous even among Hollywood's biggest stars.
Wow, John Kennedy Jr. just a regular guy in New York.
And more details about that tragic night over the Atlantic. What exactly went wrong?
This was going to be a challenging flight.